Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the continuing saga of taking a walk, and I have just returned from a 10-minute walk and have retrieved some things from my nature walk and put them in a bowl. I'll show you a picture of it later, but these are just things that I found while I was out, and I created a little vignette here with all kinds of trailing vines and things. I had this on a table when the women came in for their ladies' fellowship, which I have here once a week, and they were just thinking how beautiful that was, and I thought it sounded like it was from a great expensive florist the way they talked about it, but this is what you can do on your nature walks, is to bring in something interesting, and even if you only go in your backyard. I'm Mrs. Sherman, and I am posting these videos on a page for which I'll provide a link, so you can go and listen over there and see the photographs and the other things that I write, plus a summary I try to leave. And I am also a veteran homeschooler and a preacher's wife of 50 years. And I also have I live in the manse, and I also have some other things going on that I want to share with you. I always try to share my home. I'm sitting in the guest room here. As you see, I have changed it now. We are suffering from unbearable heat, but we're enduring it as best we can. And I changed everything to white because it made me feel a little bit cooler. And so I hope you're enjoying looking at it. And I even stayed in here a little bit and read some from a book just to see what the atmosphere felt like for whoever would be staying here. And as you know, I now have descendants, and so there's always a possibility that someone will be here. So in my last video and all the previous ones, I encouraged you all to do things on purpose that were relaxing, that gave you some kind of felicity. And I would like to share some things that I have done. And the first one, of course, was the bowl of greenery and the feather and the cones and things that I had done. I also did, and I told you before about how you need to get a book that you like and make it an assignment. So I did one of the assignments in this book called Cottage Core. I did the page, everything on this page. You know, I already know how to do this stuff, and I have done things like this, but I enjoyed using it as a course and saying, okay, I'm going to make that. And that's just a little cutlery set with a burlap tied around it and some jute rope, and also a little this is interesting, a stack of cups with made into a vase and put wildflowers in it, table setting. And so then I'm looking forward to doing the next page tomorrow if I can. And I also have made myself a little glass full of air freshener for the home. You know how you can get these melts and they all smell so good, and some of you use essential oils. Well, I didn't have any of those, and I wasn't really keen on buying anything. And I had smelled something that I really liked at Hobby Lobby when we were let out for that 6 weeks. I went and they had a beautiful candle, and I read the ingredients on it, and it said it was made of orange peel and maple and vanilla and cloves, and I took note of that. So when I came home, I found things in my pantry that I already had. I have the dried orange peel and lemon peel, and I had some maple flavoring, you know, that comes in the little flavoring bottles, and you put a half teaspoon in your cookie mix, and also had vanilla. And by the way, when you have these empty bottles and you've run out and you think, oh, I just need a little bit more, you just fill them with water, shake it up. You don't have to fill it with water, but maybe a fourth of a way with water. Shake it up, and you'll get quite a bit of flavoring out of it. You can even use it for your baking. So I did that, and I was able to squeeze a little bit out of here. And whatever else I had, I can't remember everything, but I believe there was cloves and nutmeg. And I also had some rum flavoring, which is kind of like, smells like raisins, you know, cooked raisins. So I filled this up and put it on one of those hot plates, you know, the little plug-in candle plates. Do you know that this scented the room that I wanted so well. I thought it would, break down and get bitter, and I've tried it with coffee grounds that didn't work as well. And so I'm really happy about that because I'll just throw this outside. I don't have to worry about anything toxic going out there, and I don't have to fill up my trash can with something that will end up in the landfill. And I'm very happy with it. So I want you to know that that works and you can do it. I would probably not use the citrus. I really loved that nutty, citrusy smell, and there was some pumpkin pie spice I added to it. I'm very happy with this. So it filled up that little corner that was getting kind of musty. I cleaned as best I could, and I just knew that I needed something else. But you can use whatever you have. And then trying to think of another thing that I did that I've just been outside and have done quite a number of just things on purpose that were small. And I'll probably think of it as I go along. And today, I know what it was. I watched a movie, and it was called It Happened on Fifth Avenue. But every time I mention this, people are thinking of the Christmas movie with Maureen O'Hara and the Santa Claus. And that's not what it is. And this was from, goodness, I'm not sure what year it was, but it's called It Happened on Fifth Avenue. And I'm not sure, you better preview it first to see if it's probably done in the 1940s. You better preview it first before watching it with children. I think it's more of an adult movie, but I mean, as far as theme, it's not as interesting for children. But what it was, I'll just read on the back of it. Making his winter home in a vacant New York City mansion owned by vacationing industrialist Michael O'Connor, a philosophizing hobo decides to take in a few homeless GIs. O'Connor's unhappy daughter, Trudy, ran away from finishing school and returns home unexpectedly, but doesn't tell anyone there who she is or who her father is when he comes looking for her disguised as a butler. The reason I ran across this is we were doing butler school. The last time all the descendants came, we did butler school and had a wonderful time. So we looked for movies that we had that had butlers in them. Meanwhile, O'Connor unwittingly competes with the XGI in a land deal. The film, nominated Best Original Story, contains a message of self-worth. Now, the thing that I liked about it the most was as soon as the owner left the mansion to go to warmer climes in the winter, this bum moved in and started to take in people who had been in the military but were homeless and had nowhere to go. But they set up a system kind of like the Magna Carta where there were rules. You had to make your bed. You had to clean up after yourself. You weren't allowed to walk around in dirty clothes. You had to do your own washing by hand in a little basin. And you had to be neat and tidy and clean. You had to be polite. You had to clean up your plate. It was pretty strict. But they all were happy and they lived together. And I believe they just lived in the basement of this house. They didn't go upstairs. I'm not sure. I tried to look to see if I could figure it out. It looked like in the servants' quarters or something. And anyway, the owner comes home. I forget why he came home. He wasn't supposed to, but he came home and was surprised. And he tried to get in, and the hobo said, "You can't come in unless you obey the rules," or something like that. So the owner just kind of went along with it. He couldn't protest. I'm sure he said a couple times, but So then the daughter, who was already there, was telling her father, be quiet, because she wanted to come too. But anyway, they ended up having quite a happy time. And the industrialist, the owner of the house, he was told by the hobo, "You didn't make your bed this morning. You have to go back and do it or you won't be able to live here." Anyway, we really enjoyed this. And so I wanted to tell you about it. It happened on Fifth Avenue. You can get it on DVD. You can order it from somewhere. I am not sure. You can see a clip of it on YouTube, I believe. So that was one thing that I did that was useless, but I've decided to do several things that don't seem to be too intense throughout the day, and the 10-minute walk was one of them. And I was struck by this man's book, The Jane Austen Diet. And I wanted to tell you about it because I have a cover on it, The Jane Austen Diet. Now, because of the name, the word diet, I've had this book laying around, and there are people just won't even pick it up and go through it because of that word diet on it, but it isn't a diet at all. Not the kind we would think of as a diet. So he was talking about last time that I was broadcasting, that the diet was a normal life, and quoting a lot of Jane Austen books. But one of the things that struck me that he said in the last time that I read, and by the way, I did get permission from the author. It's really neat to correspond with a real author, isn't it? And speaking of authors, if you want to get my book, Just Breathing the Air, you have to write to me. My address is on the sidebar, Lady Lydia Speaks at Comcast.net, because the publishing company put the price up so high that I'm the only one that can buy it, and I pay $30 for it, and that's all you'll have, $33, and that's including postage, and that's all you'd have to pay for it too. But I would have to have it mailed to you. I would buy it myself and then mail it to you, have it mailed to you from the company for that price. But for some reason, we tinkered with it. My daughter and I, we went into the dashboard and we tinkered with it. We tried to get that price down, but it was I decided to leave it alone. It was just taking up too much time. But so it's $33 if you want it. I don't make anything off of it. That's what I have to pay when I order it. But it was just for the family. I wrote it for them so they could get it, and so I'm sharing it with you too. So, but it was really nice to correspond with this guy, and he mentioned that when you make a New Year's resolution, to after Christmas to New Year's, you're going to get physically fit. You're going to join a fitness club, and he says it lasts until February, and everybody just quits. Well, when the walking that was mentioned in here, because the name of the chapter I was reading was called "Walk Like an Elizabeth: Exercise in Austen World," and walking, it doesn't stop. Like, even in the middle of the winter, if you felt like it, I just need to go for a walk, you'd go for a walk. But you wouldn't say, I need to go to the fitness club, or I need to go and sit in front of a video and do my exercises, because it's not fun. But a walk is pleasurable if you're not walking for today's definition of exercise. And so I wanted to bring that out, that the walking, as I was walking today with my 10-minute walk, I was listening to something while I was walking. Maybe you would like to listen to the previous video on this one while you're walking, since I'm going to be talking about it. And I had considered doing 10-minute broadcasts for those who want to go on the 10-minute walk, but I'm going to have to think about what I'm going to do about that, and I'd still like to do it. We'll see if I can formulate that in my head. And so I was thinking about this when I was walking, about how, I didn't, after overeating at Christmas, I didn't make a vow, I'm going to just, exercise more or walk more. You just do it because it's so natural. You never really have to, it doesn't fail. Like he said in this book that 90% of these New Year's resolutions to exercise just came to nothing. And it all came to nothing. And so today I want to read part of the other part that I didn't read last time. So this is the second part of the chapter. I believe it's chapters 5 or 6, and it was about exercising in Austen World. Walk Like an Elizabeth. It's chapter 5. Okay, so if you've got this book, it's nice to have a book. I like turning the pages, and I really like the quality of the paper in this. It's like parchment paper. I really like that. There's a lot I like about this book. So here is the second part of Walk Like an Elizabeth. So if you'd like to go for a walk and take your device with you and stick it in wherever you put it, in whatever bag or pocket you put it in. Now, my daughter bought me a silver cloth to put in my pocket if I happen to put my phone in there. So you can look that up, see if that's any good, if that's helpful. So, run mad as often as you choose, but do not faint. I'm sure she got this as a take on to keep going, but do not faint. Now, to tackle the running question, did Jane ever run? Did she approve of it? Surprisingly, there's quite a lot of running about in her novels, and all of it generally positive. For Marianne, the one consolation of having to hurry home during a rainstorm is the enjoyment of running with all possible speed down the steep side of a hill, which immediately led back to their garden gate. Oh, doesn't that sound good? In Pride and Prejudice, Lizzie beats her sister in a running match through the house and garden because Lizzie enjoyed the habit of running more frequently than Jane. But all of this running comes in sporadic bursts. Nobody runs, i.e. jogs, for prolonged periods of time in Austen World. You know, I see people running back on the farm roads, even the farmer people, they're caught up in this new type of fitness where you jog and I suppose they're trying to keep fit, lose weight, but they'd be probably better off without the stress of it. Running for too long, over unnaturally long distances, would have defied Austen's guiding health principle, moderation in all things. Well, that's biblical too. Historically speaking, long-distance running has always been regarded as a rather dubious form of exercise. Now listen to this. If you remember your Greek history, the first marathon runner of the ancient world collapsed dead at the finish line. As Austen would say, there are very few of us who have heart enough for it. Carried on for too long, the sheer heart-pumping intensity of running can dangerously enlarge, harden, and overstretch the heart muscle itself. Endurance runners are infamously prone to heart damage, and some of the most famous have suffered heart attacks while still young. Moderation, therefore, should keep you, as it kept Jane, from ever running into excess. Walk mostly and only run occasionally, remembering that being absolutely out of breath from haste is not a prolonged sensation in Austen World. When I walk, there's a little handicap ramp going up to the meeting house, the church building. And so I like to, during the week, run up and down that instead of steps. And it doesn't exhaust me. It's quite exhilarating. We'll finish our walk with Jane by not forgetting to take a refreshing rest from time to time. Like the intuitive exercises they are, Austen characters listen to their bodies, know when they need a break, and never pressure themselves to power through. Enjoying a guiltless rest will certainly part of Jane's broader exercise philosophy. I am quite equal to walking about and enjoying the air, and by sitting down and resting a good while between my walks, I get exercise enough. Hence, her fictional walks are always conveniently dotted with comfy benches. Yes, we need to put little seating areas. Take an old chair, instead of giving it away or taking it to Goodwill, set it somewhere around the outside of your house so you can walk and sit down once in a while. A few steps farther brought them to a comfortable-sized bench on which they all sat down. For all of us, these natural rest periods are crucial for keeping exercise pleasurable and in its proper place in our lives. Hippocrates, the world's first celebrity doctor, was saying it 2,000 years ago. The right amount of exercise, not too much and not too little, is the safest way to health. Mary Bennet, in Pride and Prejudice, would only sniff and adjust her spectacles with a "I could have told you so" expression. Exertion, she kindly reminds us, should always be in proportion to what is required. Speaking of which, even resting has its hidden health secrets in Austen World, a place where you can legitimately exercise without ever moving a delicate ankle. It starts by rethinking how you sit and stand, and then he's going to go into posture, but I want to address two things. And one is that I had spoken of resting, intermittent rest, I called it, in a previous video, and how important that is. You cannot lose weight if you don't have proper rest. You'll notice in the mornings after a good rest, adequate rest, you are probably a little lighter on the scale. So this resting is extremely important. And the other thing is that walking, he mentioned in the previous things that I had read that that people at the doctors at Duke University in 1999 had stated that the walking did more good than antidepressants and any kind of medication. That walking actually cured depression. And so here we are and I'm in the state of Oregon, where we have a Marxist governor who thinks that she's wearing a white coat, apparently, because she's made some outrageous rules for all of us that are coming soon. You know, how far you can go, and whether you're going to have to wear a smothering device outside and inside, which, yes, we're supposed to. I don't. I'm an exception, though. And because I'm a free citizen, I guess. And anyway, I don't want to get into that, but if you notice, the very thing that will cure you, the sunlight and the walking, are things that some of these governors are trying to cut off. And in some parts of the world, they're not letting you walk more than 2 miles and sometimes more than a mile. These are the things that would keep you healthy. But here makes me wonder, what is the point? Well, if you can't have the natural things that make you healthy, then you will resort to going to a physician to get a prescription to take care of the problems that not getting these natural things have caused. So look at that. You know, you can't breathe and you can't walk, you can't exercise, and you can hardly rest because, you know, the walking outside, it obviously helps your rest. So I wanted to insert that while I could. The posture is good for me. Okay, this is all about posture, and I had written an article years ago before I started broadcasting on Homemakers Radio about posture in modern times. I've been saying probably from the 1940s on. The exercise classes that we had to go to in public school were just excruciating for some of us, and they wanted you to have the posture and the exercise like as though you were in the military, and it wasn't as natural as your natural posture, and we weren't encouraged to have natural posture. But real posture is much different than what they sometimes teach you. So when the cast of Sense and Sensibility, 1995, began prep production, training for their on-screen roles, one of their first lessons was learning the correct art of Regency posture. As Emma Thompson records in the Sense and Sensibility screenplay and diaries, the film's movement coach, Jane Gibson, had to teach the actors how to sit and stand like proper Austinites, offering this helpful historic reminder. It's 1811. God is in his heaven, the monarch on his throne, and the pelvis firmly beneath the rib cage. Emma Thompson goes on to quip, apparently rock and roll liberated the pelvis, and it hasn't been the same since. Most of us don't even notice how far we've fallen or slumped from Regency posture rules. But walk around any public space, then go to the actors in Sense and Sensibility, especially the women, and the differences will be shocking. Forget liberated pelvises, we've liberated everything. Bellies, chests, shoulders, spines, necks all hang limp and loose, often launched in a near-permanent C pattern in front of the closest screen. To Austen, it would look like we've all unanimously adopted what she called the posture of reclining weakness, a body slouch Jane would have only associated with the sick, the bedridden, or the elderly. Because in Regency England, few things offered a stronger visual clue to someone's health and vitality than the simple fact that she stood firm. Now, I'm elderly, and I, during the captivity, benefited greatly because I started a little I didn't give up exercise just because I read this and it employed walking and promoted her walking idea. Yes, I walk, but I still do those stretch exercises, and I found some that you do while you're sitting in a chair, and sometimes I do other types, and I didn't give those up because I felt that I like the routine. I like to have a class and somebody telling me what to do for 5 minutes. And I feel accomplished after I've done that. And then that's my warm up. And then I go outside and walk for the 10 minutes. I loved what some of you said about going for a walk for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. And then others elaborated on that in the comments. I'm sorry I don't have my phone here where I can bring those up, but I do want to discuss some of those later. The attractiveness of good posture was deeply ingrained in the Regency mind. Enamored by the aesthetic fashions, art, and architecture of ancient Greece and Rome, Austen and her contemporaries loved all that was long and tall and firmly posed. You know, when I went to a class on etiquette for girls, they had you, for posture, imagine that you had a string from the top of your head like that, and it helped a lot to imagine that you were pulled up by a string. I admire, she said, what is tall, straight, and flourishing. Standing solidly upright, as straight as a Grecian pillar, as it were, was everyone's ideal of physical beauty and elegant strength. Francois Nevalin stressed the importance of striking this graceful attitude in his widely read posture manual, The Rudiments of Genteel Behavior, of always keeping the head erect, the shoulders drawn back, and the whole body stood extremely firm. If you're having trouble with posture, someone told me just put this part forward up, and then the shoulders will take care of themselves. Just this little area right in here by your collarbone. The rudiments of genteel behavior, of always keeping the head erect, the shoulders drawn back, and the whole body serenely firm. Anyone who has tried to maintain this graceful attitude for any extended length of time knows how physically challenging it can be. I will stop and comment on that because as an older person, I really thought I was stuck with my physical condition, my weight, my, if I got down on the floor to get something, I couldn't get back up unless someone helped me. I could never, I know it's probably not good to sit on your knees, but I couldn't sit on my knees. I hadn't done it in years. I couldn't run and I couldn't jump. Well, during captivity, these last 2 years, I dedicated myself to following a little regimen, 5 minutes a day, getting up and doing one of those things. And now I can get up by myself and I can run and I can jump. I feel like a Dick and Jane Austen, a Dick and Jane reader, because that's what they did. They ran and jumped, And now I can compete with the smallest little fellow in my family, and he loves to have foot races with me. He still always wins, but, he's smaller than me. He's shorter than me, he's faster. So I will say you can improve your posture. You can change your skin and everything. I used to have, the last 2 years I've talked about this, that I thought what I had was rosacea. Well, it's cleared up. And I'm wondering if it's because I'm in captivity and I haven't been out there with any pollution, and also my exercises, and also following a lot of other things that I now have time for. After posture lessons on the set of Sense and Sensibility, Emma Thompson realized just how physically strong Austen women were underneath these delicate muslin gowns. She writes about the hidden muscularity of the physique, the strength beneath the ease of movement. Basically, Austenites get serious back, ab workouts even when standing or sitting still. This explains why correct posture, maintained throughout the day, was deemed a legitimate exercise in Austen's day. One of the things that we learned in one of the exercise ladies that I follow on YouTube is Fabulous 50s, and she always reminds you can't just, do all these arm circles. You have to tighten the core of your body, and you have to tighten parts of your arm during certain, and that was something I was never taught, and that is an exercise in itself, even when you're standing. Basically, Austinites get serious back and ab workouts even when standing or sitting still. This explains why correct posture maintained throughout the day was deemed as legitimate exercise in Austin's day. The sheer strength involved in standing with an air of decided fashion was considerable. Walking tall and graceful wherever you went, as Caroline Bingley reminds us in Pride and Prejudice, was one of the physical accomplishments of Regency life. I realize I have a backlight here, but this is just to listen to anyway. There really isn't much to see. No one can really be esteemed accomplished who does not possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, and that applied to sitting too. Regency gentlefolk rarely slouched back or reclined in a chair. Striking a straight figure while sitting was just as important as doing so while standing. A cultural rule reflected in practically every Austen movie to date. The backs of chairs and the backs of human bodies are perpetually kept asunder. Austen's nephew recalled this social rule in his memoir. There were no deep easy chairs nor other appliances for lounging, for to lean back was luxury permitted only to old persons or invalids. Away from home was no different. While riding in carriages, healthy travelers always strive to maintain good posture, quite the physical feat considering the bumpiness of Regency roads. For Catherine in Northanger Abbey, a jostling ride in John Thorpe's gig along with a country roads means exercise of the most invigorating kind. That would be akin to the modern exercise machine. The next time you find yourself in an off-road vehicle on unpaved roads, try keeping your own back and core muscles straight, and you will see what Catherine means. Why good posture is one of the smartest Regency exercises we should all get back to embracing. I love that he compares, how you could possibly experience it by, imitating some of the things that they had going, like the walking and just observing. I have always wanted to walk the Oregon Trail on the part that there are some companies and people that provide Oregon Trail trips where you can walk the Oregon Trail and they guide you and you eat camp food and it's like for a day or maybe 2 days. I don't know. I don't even think you even have to stay overnight, but I'd like to walk the Oregon Trail, and then I could understand what Miss Lily of the Valley is talking about when she sends me these little books about Allison on the Oregon Trail in that she calls the Pioneer Ribbon series. I haven't heard from her in a while, but I really think she's waiting to have some experience. Okay, so she is a standing lesson of how to be happy. Now, I have talked about happiness before on Homemakers Radio. I'd like to do that again sometime. And that is having a happiness that is kind of an inside experience. Have you ever had rude people come up to you and say, "You don't look like you're very happy"? It has nothing to do with the expression on your face. Some people are just deep in thought, and some people are happy and don't have to go around smiling like on the magazines. And the Victorians were like that too. They were careful who they gave their smiles to, so it didn't mean they weren't happy. Putting aside the lamentable fact that I'm no Jane Gibson Hollywood posture coach extraordinaire, and we're not on the set of Sense and Sensibility, alas, I'll try my best to make it up to you. Here's a quick reminder on what correct posture meant to Jane and what it still means for us today. There's 4 of them. Okay? Think tall, straight, and flourishing whenever you stand, sit, or walk. Keep your chin parallel to the floor. See, we learned about that in our in the etiquette lessons. I believe it was the Christian Charm course by Emily Hunter. Keep your chin parallel to the floor and your neck even with your shoulders. We used to be told, if you ought to be able to put a pencil between the lobe of your ear and and the shoulder bone here to keep it straight. Straighten your back, but Avoid overarching the spine or puffing out your chest too far. Only Regency wenches thrust out their bosoms like that. Tighten your abs to keep your hips and pelvis in place, as Jane Gibson instructed, firmly beneath the rib cage. Put it all together. Now, I found the lady that teaches Fabulous 50. She knows all this. She brings this kind of stuff up all the time. She probably hasn't even read this book or any Jane Austen books, but she's a physical therapist that knows about how the body works. And so put it all together, and you'll be doing the Regency hokey pokey to better health in no time. Surprisingly, most people tend to experience most instantaneous feelings of well-being whenever they stand or sit up straight. Your lungs fill up with more oxygen. For years, I could never, I would say, I remember when I was a kid, that I could feel a lot of air, my lungs filled with air. And it had been a long time before I felt that feeling, that just such an exhilarating feeling of fresh air and the running. But when I changed my posture, which changed through the, which I call the mood exercises, they're just the little stretch exercises while you're sitting on a chair. When that all changed, I started to breathe in these wonderful big gulps of air like food, and it was exhilarating. Your lungs fill with more oxygen, your blood circulates more freely, and your muscles and joints instantly reward you with the much-needed stretch. What's more, science continues to discover that good posture sends out powerful and primal body instincts, not only making us look healthier, smarter, stronger, and happier. And I've said this to you before I read this book. We're going to come out the other side of this war smarter, stronger, happier, healthier, more creative, more inventive, and we'll be able to outsmart all the people that try to stop us. And we're just going to come out healthier. We're going to come out so much better and younger, maybe even better looking, because he says here they make us look better. Experiments have shown that people who adopt better posture are less stressed, more positive, have better energy, and feel more confident than people who slouch. Now, remember what I was telling you about my grandson coming, who's in his 20s, and he had been reading, for his hobby, he reads ancient history, often coming across a war or a documentary about the prisoners of war. And he told me about these international prisoners that were in captivity and how they had decided that their main goal was to escape. They plotted and they created and they schemed, and they also did things, and they even built things, and they did things that helped and aided them in their escape. And they had such elaborate plans. They'd go to sleep at night thinking of it, and waking in the morning. They weren't going to wait to be rescued or wait for anyone to help them. And that's the way we have to be in our lives. No one's going to help us. Even a physician doesn't know everything about you, because they don't know your history. They really don't know the stress or trauma in your life. They don't know what's happened. They don't know as much as you do. And so we're going to have to look after our own health and to help ourselves as much as we can. And we who are elderly need to be really smart, because the generation that's going through their 40s and 50s, they're disappointingly not as smart as we wanted them to be. We thought, we want the next generation to be smarter than us and to be more successful than us, and I don't see it as much. And a lot of people my age are so glad that they're alive, because they can help. And so we need to keep ourselves well and smart too. So I'm taking you through some homeschool courses to help you with that. Okay. Experiments have shown that they are less stressed and more positive. Jane's novels offer a litany of support for this, whereas Lady Bertram in Mansfield Park is made self-evidently stupid by slouching every day on the sofa. I cannot think, I cannot work, I feel so very stupid. Austen's most physically upright characters always have the first dibs on health and happiness. Mrs. Croft, most memorably. Persuasion's patron saint of good posture. She reminds us that you don't have to be the tallest, slimmest, and most beautiful person in Austen World to be a most attractive picture of happiness. Good posture and a little uprightness goes a long way. Mrs. Croft, though neither tall nor fat, had a squareness, uprightness, and vigor of form which gave importance to her person. Now I just have 2 more pages here to read. Other exercise in Austen World. Garden. Charlotte may have a teensy double motive in keeping Mr. Collins in the garden as far away from her as physically possible. Charlotte talked of the healthfulness of the exercise and owned she encouraged it as much as possible, but others of the era had deep beliefs in its benefits. Since 1670, the English were advised to spend spare time in the garden, either digging, setting out, or weeding. This is a problem I've had, is sometimes that garden just won't produce like I like. I mean, there's not enough in it some years to even preserve. We just put it on our table for the summer and eat it, and we store a few things that last till September. We've got such a big family now that it just can't, and it doesn't produce sometimes. But I was talking to Mr. S. about it. Why don't we just abandon it and let the grapevines take over? And he said, no, let's just plant it just because we can. Let's just plant it because that's what we do. That's what farmers do. And whether it comes or not, it doesn't matter, but it's a very good exercise for us. And so this is what this is saying about the garden. Charlotte talked of healthfulness of the exercise and owned she encouraged it as much as possible. But others, she was talking about her husband. Remember Mr. Collins, that he spent a lot of time in the garden? But others of the era had deep beliefs in its benefits. Since 1670, the English were advised to spend spare time in the garden, either digging, setting out, or weeding, for there is no better way to preserve your health. Jane's mother, who lived to be 88, gardened throughout her long life, once composing a few verses of the exercise. My flesh is much warmer, my blood freer flows, when I work in the garden with rakes and with hoes. Not only a legitimate workout for our bodies, spending 30 minutes planting a flower bed is the metabolic equivalent of a game of basketball lasting the same time. Our brains reap benefits too. Pottering about in a garden, or just walking through one, reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and refreshes us on a deep mental level. For Jane, the best rooms for writing always opened upon the garden, where I go to refresh myself every now and then and come back to solitary coolness. Now, I wanted to stop and talk about that a little bit. I've posted a lot of the paintings on here over the years from the 1800s, the late 1700s, 1800s, and the realists and the pre-Raphaelites and things like that. And they always, and Edmund B. Layton, who I liked a lot, who studied to be an architect, his paintings were very beautiful, very precise, and he often had a beautiful young woman walking in the garden, and there can be nothing as pretty as that. And when my daughter was a teenager, I always enjoyed seeing her puttering about in the garden with her big hat. But you know something? We oldies can still do that. You get physically fit, you wear a big hat, dress up, and go to the garden. You know, you can get these garden pinafores that you wear and put the apron on, the bib-type apron, and protect yourself, and just go and really enjoy yourself. Take a basket with you with a flask of hot water and make yourself some tea while you're there. And one of my husband's cousins had a little garden that she had a little chair to sit on, and where she had a hose that she could reach, and she just watered it while she was sitting. She grew a lot of nice things, and she had her little picnic basket with her and a little book, and she could just stay in there, and she could sip her tea and read and kind of enjoy it. It was just a vegetable garden, but she really enjoyed it. And so it's not too late for us to live a beautiful life. And so other exercises. Now he mentions dance. I skipped that one because I know there's a lot of people that don't want the modern dance, and so I don't want to talk about modern dance. But there's nothing wrong with dancing by yourself. There's nothing wrong with learning a few dance steps and jumping around by yourself. In fact, probably very good for you. And so the only thing that we Christians didn't like about the modern dance is it gave people an opportunity to get too physically close to people that they were not married to. And so we wanted to be careful about that. But there's nothing wrong with, knowing a little bit about a hop and a skip and a jump and just dancing by yourself. And when my children were little, and probably yours too, they wanted to jump around and dance. And we'd take them by the hands and we would jump around together, and pretend to dance. There's nothing wrong with that. And we read in the Old Testament where David danced, but I'm sure that he was dancing by himself. And many of the dances of the time were not with the opposite gender; they were just with the same. And so, let me read what he says about dance. Nothing epitomizes Austen's knack for mixing exercise with pleasure than that of the whirl of a ballroom. Dancing is part of a sport in her novels, something her characters can play at for hours. Willoughby dances from 8 o'clock to 4 a.m. without once sitting down. And she said in Pride and Prejudice, Sir Lucas said, there's nothing like dancing. One of the most natural cardio workouts, the urge to move along to music, is imprinted in our DNA. That could be true of some people. We used to play music on the radio or whatever we had at the time, and our kids would automatically start moving and jumping up and down with the rhythm of it. So, and there is nothing wrong with it. If you keep it in the family and you are using it for, like we had a little grandson that would say, "Jump for joy," he just liked to jump, and that this is just there's nothing wrong with it, and if it's done for good. Of course, nobody needs to exercise by dancing. It may be possible to do without dancing entirely, says Austen, but when a beginning is made, when the felicities of rapid motion have once been, though slightly, felt, it must be a very heavy set that does not ask for more. So, I've often thought when I get finished with learning the exercising online, I might go and learn some dance step that would help me with my posture and keep me fit, and also add grace. So I think in that respect that it would be okay. Okay, now he talks about bathing. This is part of the exercise. A little sea bathing would set me up forever. I recently saw a play called Sanditon, which is just the play, like it wasn't like a famous movie with famous actors or anything. And I saw the play online, and they had made up a song about living by the sea, which I thought was really cute. On the surface, there doesn't seem to have been much to it. People went to the seaside, usually in winter, spent a minute or two dipping in the frigid ocean, and then called it a day. More like bobbing in cold water than actually swimming, yet people swore by its health benefits. And this was exercise? Interestingly, yes. Your body's biggest calorie-burning feature is keeping you warm at an average of 98.6 degrees. A huge energy-expending process called thermal regulation. And because your body is always trying to maintain that temperature, exposing it to anything cold, especially cold water, kicks thermal regulation into high gear, burning large amounts of calories and body fat to keep your innards warm. The ancient Romans knew it, that the way to work up an appetite was a quick plunge into the frigidarium, a large cold bath. Health-conscious Russians and Scandinavians also swear by the exhilarating exercise of getting cold, requisitely jumping into cold lakes or rolling in snow after sauna treatments. And you can power up your own thermal regulator by spending more time in water, showers, baths, or swimming pools, colder than your body temperature. Braver souls who turn the tap colder will experience the same invigorating body effects Jane experienced on a sea bathing trip in September of 1804. I continue quite well, in proof of which I have bathed again this morning. So that concludes the chapter 5, about Austen exercise. And I'm going to go on to something else. I see we are coming up on ending pretty soon, but I wanted to talk to you about a few things. I have the American Girl's Handybook, which I have read to you before, and I've read this part about forming a walking club, and I'll just read a paragraph out of this. The sound of girlish voices is suddenly heard in the quiet village streets as our walking club, issuing from the house of one of its members, starts off on the first tramp of the season. The gay chatter and bubbling laughter blend with the twittering and chirping of the birds fluttering. This is one of the things I think we have to watch for if we're going on a walking trip, to be as quiet as we can so we can hear other things. But suddenly it seems to, the walking seems to stimulate the tongue just like tea does. When you get around with a bunch of tea drinkers, they just chatter all the time. All these merry sounds seem in perfect harmony with the youthful gladness of the bright morning. There is a subtle power and exhilaration in the spring sunshine that stimulates the blood and sends it tingling through our veins, as with light springing steps we quickly leave the village behind us and penetrate into the outlying country, stopping now and then to secure a branch of the downy pussy willow or brilliant red blossoms of the maple, and again to admire a distant view where the trees seem enveloped in a hazy mist of delicate color. On we go, exploring sequestered spots or entering deep into the woods in search of early wildflowers. So this is chapter 3 of the Girl's Handy Book. Now I want to also talk about walking, how important it is to learn to make maps. And if you know how to make maps, all you have to do is kind of look at an atlas. By the way, go to wherever you can and buy yourself an atlas, a road atlas, because they're going to stop making maps and make us all find everything on Google, and we don't know if they're going to tell us the truth. And then they will take all that away from us, and we won't even know where we are. So one way to teach children or others, I mean, we can just play this game with adults too. It's a lot of fun. Draw a treasure map of your house or yard and have people go looking for treasure and following the map and the clues. And this should be included in your children's curriculum, map making, and learn the history of map making. I told you before that Christopher Columbus knew about map making, and I guess made maps, and he lived at a time where if a thief stole your map, it was a severe penalty. They could go to jail for a long, long time because your map was the route to your treasure or the route to your living, the route to you couldn't interfere with anyone's living, and so these maps are very important. If you have old maps, you can use them for wrapping paper, and people actually save them. And so get yourself some road atlases if you can find them. It'll come from your country's automobile association, or some other, like your Chamber of Commerce. You might be able to find them, and it's worth paying for. And learn to read them. Now, the way that you learn to read them is there is a legend called a legend, a map legend. It's usually inside the first page. It tells you what a red line means, what a blue line means, and what little dots mean, and what this means. And I'll just read some of them. So here's a purple line: free limited access highway. Toll limited access highway is the green one. Multi-lane highway is red. Principal highway is a darkened red. And they just have, so then when you go and look at this, and you see the dots and the dashes, and it'll tell you what is what, and tell you what the river is and the mountain is, that sort of thing. Okay, I wanted to tell you also the American boys. I want to be fair to the boys. I had more boys than girls, and I'm still fascinated with this chapter from boys on how to camp without a tent. And it showed how to just take sticks. So this is what we're going to do when the descendants come again. We're going to do Childhood Revisited, Homeschool Revisited. We're going to do some of these things. You just take sticks. I'll just make a mini one and stick them in the ground, and then you thatch it with branches. We can do that. And then it tells later on in this chapter how to make a bed with sticks, well, with sturdier limbs, and what to use for the bed, and how to make a mattress of pine needles, hay, or grass. And the author says, I have slept very comfortably upon a brush mattress covered with ironweed. Ironweed is a flat top, a common Kentucky weed with beautiful purple blossoms. I would suggest to any boy who means to try this rustic cabinet making, that's what they call the building of beds, to select carefully for the bedpost sticks. Oh, here's I got to read this previous paragraph because it fascinated me so much. Before going to housekeeping, this is after he's got the shelter made. He says, before going to housekeeping, some furniture will be necessary, and for this we propose to do our shopping right in the neighborhood of our cottage. Here is our cabinet and upholstery shop in the wholesome fragrance of the pines. After your labor of building, your thoughts will naturally turn to a place for sleeping. And then he goes on to explain how to cut it and place it. Now, we might not be able to do that, but it's lovely to read about it. Now, one of the things people get most frustrated about is they'll get a book or they'll get a craft book and they'll say, well, I'll never do all that stuff. You don't have to. You can just read about it and imagine doing it, but you don't have to do all that. Now, before I go, I want to read a little bit out of Beautiful Girlhood because I didn't get to go to this chapter called Making Friends of Books. I'll probably have to do that next time because I want to tell you about something about the friendship of books. Now, this is what you can do in captivity, is make a friendship of books. There again, you have to be warned that just because something is called a classic does not mean that it is sound in the scriptures I've told you about, whatever's good, beautiful, lovely, it can be just as bad. I mean, nothing has changed. People weren't extremely good then either. Sometimes authors would get in that would, and their works today proclaimed classics that promoted all kinds of stuff that you probably wouldn't want your children influenced by. So what I do is I just write little books to my grandchildren and I call them classics. So in this movie, Love Comes Softly, by Jeanette, the book by Jeanette Oakes. This woman who had a stepdaughter, the dad wanted this wife to teach his daughter how to read, so she was teaching her how to sound out words and everything. And the little girl said, "I don't see why I've got to know all this stuff. Why do I have to learn to read anyway?" And so her stepmother said, "When you can read, you can build things and you can go on adventures without even leaving your house. And you can be in a castle and and she just mentioned a whole lot of things that you could do when you could read. And this is one of the beauties of captivity, is that you can read. But let me warn you too, that reading can be passive. You can get lost in books, and many of us have. And my mother had a big family, and so she would look around for the one that was the most idle and make them wash dishes or make them do something. The one that was causing a quarrel or trouble, make them work. So, but the rest of us, if we knew she approved of reading, so we would be reading a book, and she would say, "What are you doing?" And I would say, "I'm reading a book, I'm reading." And she'd leave us alone. And so we would get lost in books, and we could also get out of some of the work. But reading can be passive. It's probably better to write. However, reading is important if you want to learn to spell, if you want sentence structure. It helps you observe. So ladies, I hope that this has, let me just look at my list and make sure. Oh, yes. My descendants have started their homeschool with their children, and I got to feeling kind of left out because we did that every year. We ordered the materials and the books and the art supplies, and I missed it. I was really... You just felt kind of blank and lost. So I've sworn off of getting new books because I've just been through so many books and trying to clean them and put them away, and still haven't caught up to it. But I did break down and order a couple of books, so I will so that I could have homeschool too. I just felt left out, and I started up my art classes again, so that'll be good. And so once a month, ladies, please have a deliberate serene day and do something like make yourself something that you can heat and scent your house with that's non-toxic, and just have a deliberate, serene day. Take care of yourself and develop a good habit, and go for a walk every day if you possibly can. And I will try to give you the recipe that someone sent me recently for hydroxychloroquine. And it was amazing what it really was. You can make it. And I remember that there were always all kinds of tonics that my mother knew about, but she grew up in the prairies in Canada, and she said that the Indians taught them a lot about these tonics. So be sure that you do something that gives you some kind of peace and calm. Today, I've sworn off of books, but I've decided that I'm going to order a cookbook. Like, really, I need another cookbook, but I have a friend that just collects cookbooks because she likes them. She likes to read them. She likes to look at the pictures. It calms her, but relaxes her. So, whatever. It's just fine. So, ladies, I hope this has done you some good and that you also got in your 10-minute walk while you did it. If it only lasted 10 minutes, you can always stop and restart where you left off and go for your 10-minute walk at night. So, ladies, God bless you, and I'm so honored that you came. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Just keep your comments coming. Thank you. Bye.